Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're not just looking at research methods, we're really diving into how we understand human experiences. The stories, the complexities that make us tick.
And you've brought us a really fascinating source for this Dr. Lane Wenhuang Zhang seminar. It's called Emerging Ethnographic Narrative Approaches to Studies in Linguistics, Culture, and Society. Quite a mouthful.
It is. But our mission here is to sort of unpack all that. We want to look at these innovative qualitative methods, the ones that blend traditional ethnography with, like, storytelling.
Right. It's about finding that shortcut, isn't it? Not just to what people do, but the why. Understanding how their stories shape things.
Exactly. And honestly, get ready for some genuinely surprising insights here. It might change how you think about research.
Definitely.
So Dr. Zhang kicked things off by tackling something pretty common. This idea that qualitative research, the kind without big numbers, is somehow less rigorous, less scientific.
That old chestnut. She really pushed back on that. Emphasized that it is rigorous. It just prioritizes, depth engagement. Asking exploratory questions.
Yeah, it's about really getting into the heart of the experience, right? Not just like skimming the surface with a quick survey or something.
Precisely. And here's the kicker she brought up. Every single study, doesn't matter how creative or how scientific it seems, it's built on something called a research paradigm.
A paradigm, okay.
Yeah, it's like this invisible framework. It dictates how we even see reality. That's ontology, how we think the world is. And then epistemology, how we think we can know things about that world.
Whoa, so that's fundamental. It's not just jargon.
Not at all. Your paradigm, your basic beliefs, they actually shape the kind of truth you can even find long before you write question one.
So you're saying our underlying beliefs about the world sort of predetermine our research choices.
Yeah.
That's a big thought.
It really is.
And Dr. Zhang laid out a few major ones, right, to show how different these views can be.
Yeah, she did.
First was positivism. That's the one that thinks reality is objective, kind of out there, waiting to be measured. Aims for universal laws.
Right. That's the classic quantitative approach often. Find the objective truth.
And constructivism. That sounds different. It argues reality is socially constructed.
Exactly. So truth isn't this single thing. It's subjective, multiple truths, all shaped by, how we interact and interpret things.
Sure.
Qualitative stuff often lives here.
Okay. And then critical theory.
That one zooms in on power, inequality, how research can actually be a tool for social change, maybe giving a voice to marginalized groups.
Got it. And the last one was pragmatism. It sounded pretty straightforward.
Yeah, pragmatism is just like what works. Whatever methods you need to answer the question, use them. Mix and match if you have to.
Okay. So qualitative studies often lean towards constructivism or critical theory.
Because they value the context, right? The individual viewpoints, the richness that you don't get from just numbers.
Makes sense.
And it really pushes that question. Are we as researchers clear on our own foundations? Dr. Zhang really hammered home the need to distinguish between a real theory and just say a concept or a technique.
Right. That distinction is crucial, isn't it? It can mess up a study before it starts.
Absolutely.
She had that great example, didn't she, about scaffolding in education. We all know it. It helps students learn. But it's not a theory itself. It comes from a learning theory.
Exactly. It's a technique derived from theory, or she mentioned community of practice. That's an approach, maybe a framework, but not a standalone theory explaining why people behave certain ways.
So it's about getting that conceptual grounding solid first.
Yes. Before you jump to the how-to, she even joked that mastering that theoretical ground is often the harder part, harder than learning the method.
But it determines the impact, right? The depth.
That's what she argued. And it's a huge takeaway for anyone doing any kind of research, I think.
Definitely. Okay, so to really get these newer approaches, we need to understand the classic first. Ethnography.
Right, the bedrock. Dan Tuk Chi, or Dien Dam in Vietnamese, as she mentioned. It's that deep, immersive study, going into a culture or a group for a long time. Extended field work.
Not just a quick visit, then.
Not at all. In traditional ethnography, the researcher becomes a participant observer.
Yeah.
You're in it, living the daily life as much as possible.
Right.
The core idea is just that reality is super contextual. You only understand it by being there in the natural setting for a prolonged period. You can't just, read a book about it and get the full picture.
So you're really embedded. And the data isn't just one thing, is it? You mentioned observations.
Yeah.
Interviews.
Yeah, it's a whole mix. Observations, definitely. In-depth interviews, tons of field notes, detailed notes, sometimes collecting artifacts, photos, anything that helps build this rich, holistic picture. like putting together a mosaic of that group's life.
And how the researcher tells that story matters too.
Hugely. The narrative voice is key. It can range from trying to be objective, just describing, to being much more interpretive. And modern ethnography, Dr. Jiang pointed out, is often more reflexive.
Reflexive, meaning?
Meaning acknowledging your own influence, your perspective, your biases. And sometimes it's critical too, maybe even advocating for the community. It connects to that idea of praxis, linking the theory, the understanding you gain, and actual practice or action. So the final write-up, it's not just analysis, it's also a story. It blurs those lines.
Research that informs action.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
But ethnography hasn't stood still. This is where Dr. Jiang got into the really exciting stuff, these hybrid approaches, blending ethnography with narrative, other methods.
Exactly. These newer ways keep that ethnographic spirit, the focus on context, depth, the human voice, but they add new twists, new tools for the toolkit.
So what are some of these?
Okay, well, one is participatory community-based ethnography. Think nghiên, the Jadua Vaugdong. Here, the community members aren't just subjects.
They're partners.
Yeah, co-researchers. They help shape the questions, collect data, analyze it, and the findings often get shared back in practical ways like workshops to actually benefit the community directly.
That sounds really empowering.
It can be. Then there's the ethnographic case study, nghiên den tin home. Instead of a whole culture, you focus intensely on one specific case. Could be a school, an organization, a specific event.
So same depth, but tighter focus.
Right. You still get that rich detail, but within clearer boundaries. You're telling the story of the case.
Okay. What else?
Autoethnography, the danti. This one's really interesting. The researcher's own lived experience is the main data source.
Your own life.
Your own life, yeah. It's super reflexive. You use your personal stories to explore cultural issues, linking your autobiography to wider social analysis.
How do you ensure rigor with that? Isn't it just personal?
That's the challenge. Rigor comes from being really transparent about your position, connecting your personal insights clearly to existing theories, and rigorous self-analysis. It's not just diary writing. It's analysis through personal narrative.
Fascinating.
Then you can have collaborative versions like duo or trio ethnography. And the dutai. 2 or 3 researchers explore a topic together, using their dialogue and different experiences as data.
So the conversation between them is key.
Exactly. How their understanding shifts and grows through that interaction. They might even present findings as, like, a script showing their different voices, polyphony, they call it.
Multiple voices, side by side.
Cool. And then there's visual ethnography, indam bangnyan. This brings photos, videos, drawings right into the center.
Using images as data.
As core data, yeah. Maybe using photo elicitation, gunyam bangan, where you ask participants to take photos or talk about existing ones. You analyze the visuals alongside interviews, what's shown, what does it mean. It can be multimodal, mixing text, sound, image.
Wow, that sounds really rich.
It can be incredibly powerful. Finally, she talked about narrative inquiry, Mingyan Kutisun. Here, stories themselves are the focus, both the method and the outcome.
So you collect stories.
You collect narratives maybe from interviews, diaries, letters, and you analyze them for themes, structure, meaning. The researcher often co-creates the meaning with the participant. And the findings. Often presented as stories themselves, maybe timelines, composite characters, interwoven with analysis.
It really sounds like there's huge potential for creativity here.
Yeah.
Doing these hybrid methods, fun fop lie, she put it.
Absolutely.
You could mix autoethnography with photos or tell a case study through short stories.
You absolutely could. The key, though, as you hinted earlier, is justifying it. It can't just be novelty for novelty's sake. Why does this specific mix help answer your research question? That's the crucial part. Creativity with purpose.
Creativity with purpose. Got it. So let's talk practicalities. How do you actually do this? Collect the data, make sense of it.
Right. So data collection. Qualitative work is flexible. It often evolves. Common tools are open-ended interviews, participant observation like we discussed, documents, field notes.
Any tips? Dr. Jiang must have had some practical advice.
Oh yeah, some golden ones, like frame interviews as conversations, not intervals. Helps people relax, open up more.
Makes sense. Less formal.
Yeah. And don't go in with a giant list of rigid questions. Have maybe 10 key prompts, but be ready to follow their lead. Let their story guide things.
Let it flow naturally.
Exactly. She also suggested artifact elicitation. Ask people to bring an object, a photo, something meaningful. It can spark amazing stories you wouldn't get otherwise.
That's a great idea.
And a very practical tip for these longer studies: Always recruit more people than you think you need.
Oh, why is that?
Because life happens. People move, get busy, change their minds. Especially in studies that require deep, ongoing engagement, some drop-off is pretty normal. Better to plan for it. Building that trust, that rapport, takes time too.
Good point. Okay, so you've got all this rich data notes, transcripts, maybe photos. What about data analysis?
Well, it usually involves things like thematic coding. You immerse yourself in the data reading, rereading, looking for patterns, themes, key ideas. For narrative approaches, you're also looking at how the story is told. The structure, the tone, metaphors they use, that carries meaning too.
The form as well as the content.
Precisely. And Dr. Jing really stressed reflexivity again here during analysis, constantly asking yourself, how is my background, my assumptions shaping how I'm interpreting this?
Being self-aware.
Critically self-aware, especially important if you're doing autoethnography, where you're analyzing your own experience. You write, reflect, revise, write some more, often using vignettes, those short narrative chunks, as both a way to present and analyze.
So the writing is the analysis, in a way.
It can be, yeah. It's an iterative process. And in collaborative work, like duoethnography, the analysis might be a group activity discussing interpretations together.
Right. Which brings us to presentation of findings. It's not just charts and graphs here, is it?
Definitely not. The write-up itself is often a creative act. Findings are presented as, rich descriptions, compelling stories, detailed case profiles.
Like the vignettes you mentioned.
Exactly. Dr. Zhang shared an example where they used narrative vignettes, short first-person accounts from participants, followed by analysis connecting those stories back to the theory.
So the story comes first, then the interpretation.
Often, yeah. An autoethnography might read like sections of a memoir with academic discussion woven in. Visual ethnography might be a photo essay with analytical captions. The goal is always to transport the reader into the participant's world, to achieve that depth and resonance.
But it still needs to be rigorous, right? Grounded.
Absolutely critical. Even the most creative presentation has to clearly link back to the research questions, the theory, the data. It has to be scholarly, transparent, and justified. Evocative and informative.
Okay, this is all fascinating conceptually. But Dr. Zhang shared an example from her own work, didn't she? To make it concrete.
She did, yeah. A collaborative autoethnography. It looked at professional development for Vietnamese English language teachers within their teacher associations, LTAs they're called.
Okay, LTAs. And what was the research question?
They asked how these LTAs support or maybe hinder teacher autonomy in their professional learning. Published in 2025, apparently.
And it was collaborative autoethnography. So the researchers were teachers themselves.
Exactly. Dr. Zhang and her colleagues were all Vietnamese educators. They used their own experiences working with LTs as the primary data. They wrote narrative vignettes about it.
Wow. Using their own stories. And how did they analyze that? What theories did they use?
They used some really interesting lenses. One was origins versus pawns. It's a concept from motivation theory. Are you feeling like an origin, like you're driving your own actions? Or a pawn just being moved around?
Redundancy versus pawns.
Okay. And they also used self-determination theory, thetoeicfocus, which focuses on autonomy, competence, and relatedness as basic human needs for motivation. So they look at their stories through these theoretical frameworks.
And by reflecting together on these personal narratives, what did they find? What themes came out?
Several really powerful ones emerged, which they presented as thematic vignettes.
Like what?
Well, first, a big theme around belonging and inclusion. Lots of teachers, especially if they're younger or maybe from rural areas, felt kind of on the edge of LTA activities, not fully included.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Second, this intense pressure to publish. They found LTAs often put a huge emphasis on formal academic achievements, like publishing papers.
Which might sideline teachers focus more on classroom practice.
Exactly. Or those without the resources or time for academic writing. It could be quite discouraging for some.
Yeah, I see that.
Third, mentorship, Colvin, came up as really positive. When senior teachers mentored junior ones, it created great learning opportunities and empowerment for both sides. But formal mentorship programs were actually quite rare. It was mostly informal, suggesting a missed opportunity for the LTAs to structure that support better.
Interesting. Any other big themes?
Yes, and this one was quite intriguing, possibly unexpected. They called it authoritarian shadows.
Authoritarian shadows. What does that mean?
It was this idea, emerging from their shared narratives, that maybe some leftover bits of a more authoritarian culture were subtly limiting open discussion and genuine autonomy within the LTAs.
Wow. So that wasn't something they were looking for initially.
Doesn't sound like it. It emerged from that deep, collaborative reflection on their lived experiences. It shows how these methods can uncover these really deep, underlying cultural factors you might totally miss otherwise.
That's incredible. So they didn't just get rich data, they processed it in this deeply personal way that led to insights about themselves and the organizations.
Precisely. Real organizational implications came out of it. It's a perfect example of that praxis idea theory, personal experience, and potential for change all interwoven.
What a powerful illustration. Okay, so wrapping this all up, this deep dive has shown some amazing ways to get at human stories. What are the big takeaways for someone thinking about using these approaches?
Well, Dr. Zhang was clear about both the upsides and the downsides. The strengths are pretty obvious, right? They put human experience front and center.
Amplify voices that might get lost otherwise.
Exactly. Voices often lost in big surveys or statistics, and they uncover nuances, those hidden power dynamics, the emotional stuff, the subjective meanings that numbers just can't capture.
And the narrative style makes it more accessible.
Potentially, yeah. Findings presented as stories can be more relatable, easier for non-academics to connect with, which might boost the research's impact in the real world.
But there are challenges too. You mentioned skepticism.
Definitely. Because these methods aren't the traditional scientific mold, they can face pushback. Getting published in certain high-impact journals can be tough if reviewers are skeptical about rigor or how generalizable the findings are.
So how do you counter that?
The key, she argued, is that innovate with purpose idea again. Justify why you chose this method. Be super explicit about how you ensured rigor. Maybe use triangulation, multiple data sources. Or member checking, going back to participants to see if your interpretation resonates. Or providing really thick description, those rich, detailed accounts that let the reader judge the context.
Transparency is key.
And there are ethical complexities too, of course. Dealing with personal stories requires real sensitivity around privacy, informed consent, and how you represent people respectfully, especially when the information is sensitive.
Right. And in many of these, the researcher is the instrument, aren't they?
Yeah.
Especially autoethnography. Your own background, values, they're all in the mix.
Absolutely. That's unavoidable. Which brings us back to reflexivity.
Constantly examining your own lens.
Exactly. How does your position, your identity, your experiences influence what you see, what you focus on, how you interpret it? Dr. Zhang was quite open about her own positionality as a Vietnamese queer female scholar and how acknowledging that helps her stay mindful of potential biases and informs her work.
And collaboration helps there too.
Hugely. Duoethnography, for example, bringing multiple perspectives automatically challenges individual assumptions and broadens the understanding. It builds in that critical reflection.
So ultimately, Dr. Zhang's big message, her call to do research otherwise.
Yeah.
What does that really mean?
I think it's an invitation to move beyond just the standard methods when the question calls for it, to craft research that feels meaningful, that's innovative, that's inclusive.
Thoughtfully blending approaches.
Yeah, thoughtfully mixing things up to tackle complex questions and really valuing local context, local voices. It's about democratizing knowledge a bit, maybe. Making research more connected to the people and communities it's about.
That's a powerful call. What an amazing journey this has been, really digging into the art and science of understanding people, from philosophy right down to these really creative methods like autoethnography.
Yeah, we've seen how stories, whether they're from participants or your own life, can become incredibly powerful data when approached thoughtfully.
The goal seems to be always depth,
Mm-hmm.
resonance, really capturing the nuances of our world.
And doing it with a commitment to clarity and impact, letting those human experiences speak.
And that call to do research otherwise, it feels like it goes beyond just academia, doesn't it? It's a reminder for all of us, really, when we want to understand something or someone.
The best insights might come from listening differently, questioning more creatively.
And maybe daring to tell the stories that really need telling.
Mm-hmm.
So as you go about your day, maybe think about this. What stories are unfolding around you right now? And what kind of lens, maybe an unconventional one, might reveal what they truly mean?
A great thought to leave with.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Deep Dive. We really hope this exploration gives you a fresh perspective, maybe a new way to look at the world, one story at a time.